All right. Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of our free business training. I'm Charlie Gaudet with my main man over here, Zach Burks.
What's up?
And so, on our last business training, there's a lot of conversation around what happens when you get somebody on the phone. And so we want to kind of take you now from how to set more appointments to now we're going to go ahead and we're going to drive people or to let you know what's going to happen on the phone, how we do it, why it works so well, and so forth. And Zach, you just asked me a question about sharing my screen on the slide deck here. So I shall do that for you, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks. That'll help me kind of stay on track.
No problem. All right, my man. So why don't you sort of get started here?
Yeah. So I guess before I jump in, so this is kind of designed to be a two-step process of kind of filling out and qualifying folks in a kind of short, short process. But like on the first step is to just kind of qualify in a very short call, 15, 20 minutes. But also demonstrate some expertise and predictably move people from one step to the next or not, right? And so the goal is to figure out if you can help them or not. And I want to emphasize that last part. You're not trying to push everybody through. You really want to try to find the best fits, obviously. And I think most of the people that kind of follow these workshops and these trainings are really good about that, but it's still kind of like a disclaimer I want to throw out. You don't want to be kind of like the sell ice to an Eskimo type of person. We don't promote that or kind of push that. And that's not a philosophy that we kind of stand by. So this process is designed to kind of help you get from one step to the next and understand if you can help them. Some people call it like a discovery call. Some call it like a triage call. So you're kind of figuring out if they're a good fit without kind of wasting your time or theirs. And so we'll kind of dive into that, get it going forward.
Well, let me just jump in here real quick, Zach, just to kind of chime in to your point. I know a lot of people are, many people, when we work with sales teams and whatnot, they try to do the ever elusive, close on one call, right? In the beginning, that's what we did too, right? We wanted to see if we could close as many people on one call. The result of that, though, unfortunately, when you need to have at least an hour-long call in order to close somebody, and to take somebody from a cold prospect to an hour-long call, they don't really know you, know whether or not it makes sense. So the show-up rate is a little bit lower, number one. Number two, what you're going to find if you go to buy a car or whatnot, you'll notice that the car salesman, they're going to try to take as much time with you as possible. They're not going to try to close you. A real good car salesperson isn't going to try to close you on the sale right away. They realize that the more time they spend with you, the highly the likelihood is that you're going to go ahead and purchase. And so your close rate, actually, believe it or not, even though you might not close right away on the first call, by extending it, the close rate goes up significantly more because now you're spending more time with them. They're showing a higher level of commitment. And as Zach is going to walk you through, part of what we're doing here in this this discovery call, whatever you want to call it, right, is we're setting the stage. We're setting the stage and pre-framing it so that by the time they get to the next call, they're going to be more ready and willing to buy. So Zach, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say, conversely, a lot of people I talk to, Charlie, do not try to close in one call. They end up pushing it out to like 7, 8 calls, which is also unnecessary, right? And so this is designed to give you a process that you can follow and predictably close new business without having to go 6, 9 months. Now, some enterprise deals might be different, and there are some different quirks, but for the most part, this is designed for you to not only build that rapport, that trust, but do it in a controlled manner, and you can predictably close business. So the first one is take control. So let's say we've scheduled our call. This is going to be about 15, 20 minutes long. The first step that you want to do is take control. Now, I don't mean to be pushy, like I just said. You don't want to be the sell that ice to an Eskimo type of salesperson, but this is designed to set the expectations up front. So you've exchanged some pleasantries. You've been normal. You should be normal. Ask questions about maybe something relevant to them. Charlie, I know there's a big storm back east. Are you affected by that? Things like that. Just be a normal human being. And then you need to take control of the call from there, or it will go off the rails, right? If you allow it to kind of just go by chance, anything can happen. So if you're familiar with Sandler, then you know this as kind of like the upfront contract. And so here's what it looks like and why it's so important. First of all, you want to cover how long the call will be. You want to thank them for their time, for getting on the phone, be appreciative of that. Want to state what typically happens on the call. So this is what typically happens, and then finish with what usually happens at the end of the call, or what that next step is, right? So Charlie, I'll do a little bit of role play with you real quick, or just kind of go through it. I had actually written Whitney's name, my fiance's name, in this little script part. But hey, Whitney, real quick, we have about 15 minutes on the calendar. Does that still work for you? And hopefully they say, yeah, that still works for me. Okay, great. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with me. I'm sure you got a lot of things going on. And look, so my objective today is pretty simple. I don't have a sales pitch for you. I'm sure you're disappointed by that. But instead, it's just for us to get to know each other a little bit better and decide if it makes sense to discuss more in another call. So what that looks like is, typically I have a bunch of questions that I want to ask you. I hope that's okay. I've wrote those down prior to this call. And obviously I want you to feel free to ask me some questions. Then, at the end of this call, we usually end up in one of two places. On one hand, you might say, or we might say, that was good, but it's good. That's good enough, right? Doesn't make sense to continue forward. And that's okay. That happens. That happens all the time. On the other hand, assuming we find some areas that we can help with, and we both agree it makes sense to schedule another call, we'll go ahead and do so. And that one's usually about 45 minutes long to an hour. It's a deeper dive. It's a kind of a strategy session. And we'll just kind of go from there. But does that sound fair for today, Charlie?
Sure. Absolutely.
Great. So, I set the time up front. Hey, how long do you have set aside for this? Sometimes you might schedule a call for 15 minutes and they say, hey, I got 7 minutes. So, okay, that changes everything, right? You want to make sure that you kind of have that locked in. You thank them for their time. You want to be appreciative of that and kind of state that. And then what happens on the call? I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and what happens at the end? Yes or no, right? And so why is that important, Charlie? No one likes to waste their time. And by having an agenda, it shows that you value time and that you're going to stick to this, and this is what's going to happen, right? So I'm valuing your time and mine. B, you're kind of setting the expectations up front. Sandler has this great audio, but the example they use is, imagine going to the dentist and without saying a word, they just begin drilling in your mouth, right? You'd be like, WTF, what's going on? You'd freak out. And the same goes with sales calls. If people just jump in and start hitting you with a pitch, everyone's like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this, right? So you set the expectations up front. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. Hope that's okay. Gives you kind of permission to be a little interrogative. You don't want to be, but it allows you to ask those questions, right? And then the third step is, it's clear what the next step is at the end, which is very important. And I wrote down kind of bonus tip here. Always mention the part about it potentially not working first. And Charlie, I know you know the answer to this. I'm going to ask you right now. What does that do, right? If I say, Charlie, it may not work. I may not be able to help you at all, or we might think, this doesn't make sense to have another call. What does that do to you?
Well, two things. It disarms me, because right now I've got my BS detector up and I'm figuring you're going to sell me on everything. So that disarms me. So that says, all right, I guess, it might not work out. So, that's okay. So it disarms me a little bit, that you're not going to try to pitch me. And then the other thing is, when you're telling it, there's a little bit of a psychological trigger there that now changes the power. I thought you were going to be selling me the whole time on this call, but now I'm going to want to make sure that kind of I sell myself, because I really want you to be able to tell me at the end of the call, yeah, man, I'm a good fit, so that the prospect always wants to remain in control. Mm-hmm. And so if the salesperson now says, look, I'm going to be the one who's going to decide whether or not we're going to move forward or not, that makes me go, whoa, I now have to sell you on why I'm a good candidate.
Absolutely. And let's face it, not everyone is a good fit. So you're being honest, right?
Yeah.
You can tell me that you hate this, and that's okay. I won't be mad. And it's good to get that out of the way. So that's kind of the first step, right? You want to set the expectations and take control of what's going to happen in this call. Sound good? Any questions, Charlie?
Yeah, no, man. I think we're all good. If anybody has any questions, this is a pretty interactive type of session here. So by all means, feel free to throw anything in the chat box, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll just be kind of racing through these. I'll do my best to slow down, but if questions come up or you want to go back and discuss a particular section more, just let me know and we can do so. So
Zach,
number two.
Zach, real quick though, okay? Can you just repeat, because this is a really important part, that upfront contract? That's the most important part, actually, of this 15-minute call. Real quick, can you just say it one more time so that people understand what that upfront contract looks like?
Yeah. So, I mean, the more you stumble, I think the better. So you don't want it to be super polished. So I stumble and I do it purposely. Because I think it makes it feel more natural. But, hey, Charlie, I think we have about 15 minutes today. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, no, I got that.
Cool. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with me. So look, my objective today is pretty simple. I don't have a sales pitch for you. I'm sure you're probably expecting one, right? But instead, it's just for us to get to know each other a little bit better and then see if it makes sense to discuss more another call. So what that looks like is I have some questions for you. I'm sure you have some questions for me, and we'll just kind of go back and forth. And I want you to feel free to ask me those questions. Sound good?
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. Thank you.
Cool. And then, so at the end of the call, after, about 15, 20 minutes, we usually end up in one of two places. On one hand, we might say, that was good, but that's good enough. It doesn't make sense to continue forward. And, 15, 20 minutes, we just part ways as friends. Mm-hmm. And that happens. On the other hand, assuming we find some areas that we can help with, maybe we find a few problem, issues in your business that we can really help fix and help you grow your business, we'll schedule another call. And that one's usually about 45 minutes to an hour. But that's kind of my agenda for today. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, Zach, sounds awesome.
Cool. So yeah, that's it. I mean, it's pretty simple. And it's just kind of a quick upfront contract of, hey, this is what I want to talk about. I want you to feel free to ask me some questions, make them feel comfortable. And then at the end, and I think that's a really important part to touch on. At the end, we are going to make a decision of yes or no, right? Because what is maybe?
Maybe. It's really a nice way of saying no, right?
Well, yeah, but it's also the kiss of death, right? Maybe means I can hound you forever, and you may never respond. But if you tell me no, hey, that's fine. We both move on and we get back to what, to helping somebody else, right? So that I think that's really important to emphasize, that you have to have kind of like that yes or a no. And it's not like a pressure situation. You need to decide today, but like at least just a yes or a no of what that next step looks like. Mm-hmm. But then, quick question from Madeline. I think you can put in the upfront contract. Typically is only by phone, but you can put in things like, hey, just schedule a call for about 10, 15 minutes. That's typically what we do in our prospecting plan. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so number 2, Charlie, am I jumping in?
Yep. So number 2, don't assume, or you want me to go over to number 3?
No, number 2. So number 2, don't assume. So I think what I see a lot with a lot of salespeople is probably similar to what you were getting at, in that a lot of people are trying to close in that one call, is that they will just breeze right by everything and just go straight into like a couple questions because they know they should be asking questions, and then get straight to the pitch, right? And you don't want that. And don't assume, I think, at any point in the call that your prospect knows about you or that you understand everything about them. And so I wrote, initially, don't assume they know everything about you, because I think, of course, prospects are more educated and they probably know a lot about you before they get on the phone. But what if they don't, right? And what happens when you kind of race into those sales questions? you might have your prospect kind of confused and feeling like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not even sure who you are. Can you back up and just give me a little rundown of what you guys do? So I think one of the ideas for me on this call was to share a couple moves. So we did the upfront contract, and I want to do something that we do, and I think it kind of helps explain what we do, but it also feels more interactive, right? I'm not just pitching at them and giving them like a 10-page paragraph or essay of what we do. It's just kind of back and forth. So a good way of kind of explaining what you do without wasting a ton of time is using like questions that your ideal prospect or ideal client asks themselves when you're working with them, right? So, and can I just jump in, Charlie?
Yeah, absolutely, my man.
So, all right, Charlie, I guess before I jump in, well, hold on, let me take a step back. Before I jump in with some of the questions I have prepared for you, I guess I should probably, how much do you know about us at Predictable Profits?
I've been to your website, but I don't know a lot.
Okay. Yeah. And most people say that, right? Like, I don't know a lot, but maybe I looked at it when, we scheduled a call or something, but that's it. Okay, that's fine. So we help, and you give them kind of a little XYZ of what you do. And then in fact, when I'm sitting down with our clients, Charlie, and founders and CEOs, much like yourself, and discussing the challenges they're facing, I often hear a couple things. So on one hand, they might say they feel like they're doing everything in their business. So they're the chief executive officer and the chief executive janitor, and they just simply cannot work any harder. So they're wondering, how do I build systems in my business to remove the dependency upon me, right? And so if you do that with kind of questions, you can say, they might be asking themselves questions like this, and it kind of gives an example of like, oh yeah, maybe that's me. And instead of just kind of throwing everything at them and then saying, okay, what do you think? You can say, these are a couple questions, and go through that, and then say, Charlie, any of that sound relevant to you?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, what would you say? Which one sounds most like you, or what challenge would you say you're running into most?
All of it, if you want me to be honest.
Okay, you see what I did? Like it reverses back to them by saying, hey, we have a couple questions that our clients usually identify with. Any of that sound like you? And sometimes they'll say, nope, not me. Okay, why are we on the phone? What were we hoping to get out of today, right? And then they say, well, nothing. Okay, then maybe it doesn't make sense to continue forward. And 15 minutes is gone, but at least those 15 minutes and not an hour and a half or something, right? So it's just a good way of kind of, this is how we do it. And does that resonate with you? Make sense?
One thing that I want to chime in on, Zach, and I want you to run through it just one more time, just so that people understand the sequence and how you say it. But before Zach would say, how much do you know about us? And Zach would respond, not much. Before he goes right into, all right, let me tell you about Predictable Profits. The one thing that Zach will always say is, would it make sense for me to spend the next 30 seconds or so to tell you a little bit about us and whether or not it makes sense to stay on the call?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the reason why we do that is because I told you earlier on in this conversation that the prospects want to be in control. Right now, we are in control, but we want to give our prospect the illusion of control. And so by us saying, hey, would it make sense if we spend if I tell you about what I do in the next 30 seconds, then you can decide whether or not you want to stay on the call. We're giving them that illusion of control. That, first of all, they're asking us to tell us a little bit more about the company, and then they will decide if they want to continue or not. So again, we're just having a nice conversation. We're giving them the illusion of power, and then we're also telling them, if you want to get off the call, sure, you can get off the call. And then that's when Zach goes into his description. So Zach, let's role play a little bit so that people understand exactly how this works. So we just finished the upfront contract, and now you tell me.
Yeah. So the thing I'll say is you don't necessarily even have to say, should we stay on this call? Because you've already scheduled the call, and you can do that. But sometimes even just simply saying, hey, can I take the next 30 seconds to tell you about this, is still giving them control, right? And you're still asking for permission, which I think is important. Permission-based marketing, sales. You're getting permission instead of just, I don't know. Have you been on the receiving end of a sales call where the person just talked the entire time recently?
Actually, by a sales trainer who was trying to sell me on his services, and he talked the whole damn time. So yeah, right away, I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah, it happens a lot, and you're. I think I had a situation where I didn't want to be mean, but I probably could have put the phone down, walked away, and then came back, and he probably would have still been talking the entire time and not noticed I left. And
yeah,
and that's not good, right? You want it to be interactive, and it's intended to be a natural conversation. So hey, can I tell you a little bit about this? Yeah, go ahead, cool, and then I'll tell you, right? So I usually, like I said, I try to stumble and bumble a little bit, so it doesn't sound like I'm super rehearsed and scripted. But I usually do say the same thing almost every call. But I'll say, hey, actually, Charlie, I guess before I jump into some of the questions I have for you, obviously, I looked at your website, I saw your LinkedIn profile. Let me ask you this: how much do you know about us at Predictable Profits?
not much, actually.
Okay, I'm not unusual. A lot of people say that. Can I take maybe the next 30 seconds and tell you a little bit about what we do?
Sure, please. I'd appreciate that.
Cool. And yeah, so then I just kind of go into that and briefly explain what we do and how we do it. And it's not intended to be a brag fest or all the features. Nobody cares about that, right? You just want to get a kind of a high level intro of what you do. Make sense?
Yeah, and it's actually typically designed not necessarily and bragging all about us. It's so we're a business coaching company. And I'm giving you sort of the quick high end. We're a business coaching company. Clients from around the world typically come to us for one of three reasons. They're either asking themselves question number one, question number two, or question number three. Which one of these sounds more like you? So we're not being all braggadocious. We're just saying a quick, this is who we are. Maybe a quick, unique advantage about what makes us special, and then right away, it's people are coming to us for one of three questions. Which one is you? Because again, we want that constant interaction. We don't want to be talking all the time. And if somebody says, "Oh man, it's because I don't have any predictability in my business," that tells us that's a pain point. We want to dig into that a little bit more, and I think that opens you up, Zach, for point number three, which is understand.
It does, yes, right. So it leads into number three, which is understanding, why are they on the phone? So they might say, well, I kind of resonate with one of the three questions, and you could say, okay, that makes sense. That's not unusual. Let me ask you this: what is the biggest challenge you're facing around X, or what is the biggest challenge? Basically, you want to figure out why they're on the phone. So if someone says, I just feel like I'm doing everything myself, or I'm having trouble converting, prospects into clients. I'm having trouble teaching my salespeople how to set appointments. It becomes really clear of kind of what it is, why they're on the phone. And to be clear, and typically most people, they'll say, yeah, this is my problem. What the prospect usually brings you is not usually the real problem. Mm-hmm. And so if you can kind of say, okay, what is the biggest challenge you're facing? You can start at high level, and then you can start to really dig in and better understand what about that is important. Why did you bring that up? And what you're doing also is demonstrating your expertise, but you're also understanding if you can help them or not, right? If someone said, I want to become a doctor, I'm sorry, I can't help you, right? I mean, that's an extreme example, but you know what I mean? Like it becomes really clear, like that's just not what we do. You might be better off talking to Tom. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. Right. So you kind of get to that. And I think what happens is that, imagine going to to the doctor, you have like a back issue, and he's like, well, let's take a look at your foot. And you're like, wait a minute. I scheduled an appointment to have my back examined, not my foot. And people do that. They'll just kind of just jump right in and assume that they know what their prospect wants or wants to hear. And you don't want to assume. You really want to spend some time to better understand, where they're coming from.
So, does that make sense? Yeah. So real quick role play once again, Zach. So you went over your three questions and I answer back. I go, well, I have no predictability in my sales. You respond with?
Okay. Something like what would you say is the biggest challenge, with no predictability in your sales?
Well, I'm just not getting any leads. I'm spending a lot of time doing, LinkedIn, and it used to work, but it's not working anymore. So I really don't know what to do now.
Okay. And this kind of gets into the next step, but basically you want to say, well, okay, help me understand what's kind of going on. How many leads are you getting right now?
I'm probably getting about 8 leads a month.
Is that typical? Eight leads a month, or are some months better than others?
Oh, it's a good question. I'd say some months are better than others.
Mm-hmm. And where do you think that number should be? So you're at 8 leads per month. You said LinkedIn isn't working, and maybe it was at one point, but where do you think that number needs to be?
It should be closer to, really, I should be getting 100, but realistically speaking, right now, I think I'd be happy if I got 20, 25.
Okay. What is the plan to get there now? I mean, you probably have a plan in place, right?
Well, that's why I'm on the phone with you.
See, I mean, you made it really easy, and those conversations never really go that way. But still, you're not trying to get anybody. You're just trying to understand what's going on. Maybe they say, well, I had 200 calls and none of them converted. You're like, wait a minute. And of course, you and I, we talk sales and marketing, so that's what we do. But if you have other specific questions to your business, you can type them in the chat. We can try to figure out maybe some questions for you. But for us, our business, it usually is around business growth, and lead generation is a big one. But most people say, I need more leads, and then we start to kind of peel back the layers. You realize, well, you had 100 calls, give or take, over 6 months, and only one of them became a client. It's not lead generation. There's something else going on, right? So if you can ask questions, you really begin to understand. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so you can ask these questions to understand what the real issue is, not kind of that surface level thing.
And so, we did this in financial services. So the questions in financial services were, okay, so obviously you must have a strategy in place. How much money do you have invested in the market? 50,000, 100,000, whatever it is. So you have $100,000 invested in the market. Okay, how much money did you earn on that last month? Actually, I only earned $50. Whoa, $50. Is that typical? No, it's not. There's no consistency. We obviously must have a strategy. What is it? Well, how's it working, and so forth. So you have to understand the situation. The more somebody feels understood, suddenly they really believe that you're going to have the answer to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why this is really, really, really important to understand your prospect. Because everybody feels their situation is unique, and now you give them the opportunity to really open
and that
up.
leads well. So we put serve an appetizer. Kudos to Tom, because this is his recommendation on the title, but it's intended to kind of be like that curious thing, and it describes what this next step is. That's really important to nail your discovery call. You're not on this call to diagnose and give them ways to fix their problems, because you can't. You've only spoken with them for 15, 20 minutes. That's not your job on this call to say, well, you should do this, you should do this, and oh, have you thought about doing this? Your job is just to understand what's going on, and by way of asking these questions, you're demonstrating your expertise, and you're kind of serving an appetizer, saying, look, I know the challenges you're going through because I can ask the right questions, right? Mm-hmm. The pitch are in the questions. And a lot of times you see people will get on these types of calls and they simply just pitch, well, we do this, we do X, Y, Z, we can help you here, we can help you here. And the whole time the prospect's like, well, I never got to tell you exactly what's going on. And it's unrelated to what you're talking about, right? So you've gotten kind of the big reason out of the way. You want to ask more questions to better understand the current situation, very similar to what we just did. How many leads are you getting right now? Of your clients, how many stick around? Or do they all leave within a month? Are you like a bunch of one-off type projects? You want to ask your questions that demonstrate you understand their business, because everybody wants kind of that personalized marketing or that sales to be, specific to me. So if you can listen intently and you can kind of act like a reporter, right? You're just kind of taking notes and listening. Okay, interesting. You just want to get a full picture. That's kind of your job. The other thing I will mention is that you want to be sympathetic and not come off as though you know everything. And nobody likes that, right? If you're super polished and perfect and you just know the answers to everything, it's kind of off-putting. So
Yeah.
if you can be sympathetic, for example, let's say someone tells me, Zach, we haven't been able to generate a new client in 6 months. That don't race past that. Don't just say, okay, well, what would you like to do?
Right.
Listen to it and don't breeze by that difficult pain point, because they're kind of telling you like they're putting everything out there. I might lose my business because we haven't been able to generate a new client. So I try to like use softening statements or just to let them know I understand. That's not unusual, Charlie. I mean, I've heard that before. That's not unusual, right? So you're kind of just saying like it's not just you. It's okay. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I do see that there's another question in there. We're going to answer that at the end once we go through everything, because I want to make sure we get through this for anybody that might have to jump off. So I will answer your question, but just a little bit at the end. So is everybody following so far as what Zach just mentioned on serve the appetizer? If you're following, just throw a yes in the chat box. Let me know if that makes sense to you. Sweet. Awesome. So now, you've gone through, you've taken control. And just to reiterate the importance of taking control, do not go to step number 2 until you take control, until you have an upfront contract. Even if you have to slow somebody down and say, you know what, if they ask you a question right away, and we get this all the time where somebody's like, all right, Zach, so look, just tell me what you do. You say, I really appreciate that, and I promise you that I will answer that question, but mind if I take a step back? I've got 15 minutes set aside for this call. And so right away, you take a step back, you take control. Really, really critical for this whole process to work. Step 2, don't assume, right? You don't want to assume that you know why they're on the call. That is the number one reason. So I don't take as many sales calls as I do as I've done in the past today, because we've got other people who are taking more of the sales calls, so I can focus really in on developing the content, the coaching, and so forth. But my number one reason why I would lose a deal is that I would assume. I just assumed I knew why people were on the phone. I just assumed, hey, people are coming to me because they want to grow their business. It's really seldom is that really the case. They have a pinpointed issue that they want to talk about. So don't assume. Understand your prospect. Serve up that appetizer, as Zach just talked about, and now we're going into the last phase, which is really closing the call. And Zach, I'm going to hand that back over to you.
Yeah. So thank you. That's a good kind of summary and kind of emphasizing the important parts. And then, so you've reached the end. It's about 15, let's say 20 minutes in. Maybe sometimes it goes over. It's entirely up to you, and you can't really control entirely how much a prospect talks. Sometimes maybe they want to talk forever, and that happens, but you want to try to stay on track. So you've asked a handful of questions. You have a decent understanding of where they are, what they do, and if you can help them or not. It shouldn't, maybe not crystal clear, but you should have a general understanding, yes or no, right? So you want to wrap the call up and maybe say something like, Charlie, thanks for sharing all this information with me. I appreciate it. We've talked for about 15, 20 minutes, so let me be respectful of your time and of course of mine, and let me take a step back. Based on what we've talked about, I think we can help you, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I can make you millions of dollars, because we've only talked for 15, 20 minutes and you wouldn't believe me anyway. So, but I think it would make sense to schedule another call. On that call, we can dive in a bit deeper, discuss XYZ, and go from there. What do you think? What are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, I think that'd be great, Zach. Let's do it.
Cool. I appreciate that. So, then maybe like stumble a little bit so you don't seem like you had your calendar out the whole time. But, hold on, give me a second. I'll pull up my calendar and then kind of just pick a day and time next week. Are you free next Tuesday at, 11 a.m. Eastern time? Actually, no. Okay. Then, I'm actually free, whatever. Right. So you want to kind of lock it in. Now there are times, Charlie, where and you know this, where we say, well, I appreciate your time. Sounds like you're, running into these few issues or challenges. And to be completely honest with you, I don't think I'm the right fit for you, or that I can help you, or maybe it just doesn't make sense right now. But what I can do is I think I have a couple of resources that would be helpful. I could try to reach out to my network, see if anyone is more like, better aligned to help you. And so I'll just reach out with an email. We'll kind of go from there, So if it doesn't work, it's okay. And you want to just kind of put that out there and close it. It doesn't necessarily, answering the question that we received, I think from Madeline, it doesn't mean that you will never work with them. It just means maybe right now isn't the best fit. So sometimes for us, at least, maybe they're a little too small. They just started, they don't have any clients, and then really need to focus on maybe one or two things that we don't do, right? That's okay. So maybe we'll just say, maybe it doesn't make sense right now. So I'll go ahead and put me on our email list if that's okay with you. We'll continue to send you some updates. We do a lot of free trainings, a lot of videos, and I think those will be really valuable for you. Sound good? Something like that. So you want to keep the relationship open and nurturing, because you never know, and you want to be respectful. But if it doesn't make sense, continue the next step. Don't schedule that next step.
So, and I want to read Madeline's question. I know you guys have said money is in the no, but if in these discovery calls you receive a no, how do you know if you should back off? There's two things, right? There's a no, we're not a good fit, but we may be someday. Not a good fit now, but maybe someday later. And in that case, Zach said, we're going to provide them resources. We'll keep them on a list and nurturing and so forth. And then there are some other people, and there have been plenty of times where we just really wanted to tell somebody, go buzz off. I'll say politely, right?
Yeah.
Go fly a kite, just in case my kids are listening, right? So in those cases, we just unsubscribe them. We take them completely off our list. We don't want to follow up with them. We just do not want to work with them. And truth of the matter is, if you look at every 100 calls that we have with on a discovery call, Zach, what percentage would you say actually you feel are qualified enough to go into the next phase?
Are qualified or aren't?
Are qualified enough. Out of every 100 calls, how many of those do you say you will invite over to the next?
I think we looked last time, it was like 75, somewhere in there.
So about 75%. Now, if that number is lower than 75%, right, you got to look at how are you pre-qualifying these people? How are you getting them on the call? Because there might be a problem there. If it's higher than 75%, I'd actually start to wonder, let's look at your close rate. Maybe you're pre-qualifying people too quickly. Maybe you're moving too many people that you shouldn't be moving over into that next phase. Just make sure when you're looking at these discovery calls, right, we're pre-framing them. We're implanting a little bit of a psychological trigger. So this is kind of like this ninja trick that nobody's going to tell you, but we're going to kind of share it with you, right? The psychological trigger that basically you're going to have to sell us. We might not work with you. You're going to have to sell us on why you're a good candidate, right? So we've understood them. They spent some time really kind of selling us on why they would be a good fit. We get on to the next call. At this point, they kind of already know what we're about. They know that we understand their problem. Once we get into the next call, that's more where they know in the upfront contract, look, the purpose of today's call is we're going to be in one of two places. We're going to make a deal or we're not going to make a deal. And throughout that next call, you're really trying to figure out genuinely whether or not they really are a good fit and you're going to meet the ultimate result that they're looking at. We live in a world that's too small. There is no way in hell that I'm going to bring in a client into our business that I don't think that we're going to deliver massive results. We've got an impeccable reputation that we love and we cherish. There's a world that's too small. You put the wrong person into the right program and they start writing bad reviews, that could cost you thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So, it's kind of like Eve's apple, right? You take a look at the apple. You don't want to take a bite just because somebody's waving their credit card or cash in your face. Really take the time, pre-qualify them, know whether or not you can help them. and move them to the next phase. So once again, just to kind of recap, take control, don't assume, understand, serve an appetizer, and close the call. The 15-minute discovery call, that's designed to better understand, better qualify the prospect, even though you're adding an extra step to your sales process. This will increase your conversions. It'll increase your productivity because now you're disqualifying faster and qualifying faster. It's going to increase your conversions. Your sales team will be a heck of a lot more productive, make more money, and so forth. I know we've been over time. I appreciate everybody being here. For those of you who are still on, I want to take the opportunity to answer any questions if you have any questions. And if not, feel free. We've got additional business trainings that we're going to be putting up there at predictableprofits.com /free-business-training. Feel free to jump in there. We're going to continue to populate that. If you want to see what this looks like live, as far as the strategy session, a discovery call, whatever it is, jump on our website, predictableprofits.com, book a session with us, and then you'll have an opportunity to actually role play with us, see how this works out, and then, who knows where it goes from there. So, again, thank you all for being here. Genuinely appreciate your time. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'll continue to put out some more content, more training for you guys. And that wraps up today's training. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
See you.